Hello there everybody, you're all very welcome to the 2020 Europe Direct Soapbox speech competition. It's been run by the Europe Direct Centre in Sligo, which is based in Sligo Library. Now normally at this time we're all packed into the library with contestants and audiences ready for a really interesting evenings of speech and competition. So that's all going to happen, but we're physically packed into a virtual space instead of the library. And I suppose our advantage is that we have family and friends watching from all over the country and indeed all over the world, waiting to see the people they know speaking and to hear what all the other young people and adults have to say on our topic this evening, which is everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. There's two competitions, an under 18 and an over 18s. I now call on the KIERAN to tell you a little more about the competition.
Thank you, MAEVE. I'm delighted to open EDIC Sligo Soapbox 2020. This event brings together two public speaking competitions for 18 years and under and 19 years and over on the topic of everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. For the first time, due to the COVID restrictions, the competition will be recorded for the EDIC Sligo YouTube channel links, and the recordings will be posted in the EDIC Sligo tweets and Facebook posts. Entries have been made by speakers recording their speeches on their computer, tablet or mobile phone. The judges will view the recordings and choose winners from both competitions, and we are grateful for their time. Winners will be awarded an iPad mini in the regional final. 7 other Europe Direct information centres in public libraries around the country will also be holding similar soapbox events on this topical subject, giving the public the chance to have their say. The other regional finals that are being held in Waterford, Letterkenny, Nenagh, Blanchardstown, Portlaoise and Ballinasloe. 16 finalists will go through to compete in the grand final for substantial overall prizes, which last year included a trip to Brussels and a visit to the European Parliament, and of course the title National Europe Direct Soapbox Winner 2020. COVID restrictions may mean that the overall prizes may have to be replaced or amended, but this will be announced before the national final, which is scheduled to be held during the first week of December. Each contestant will have 3 minutes to make their case, to convince the judges and win the overall audience. Echoing its Hyde Park London origins, the soapbox is the perfect way to showcase our proud tradition of public speaking, and this annual competition is a very popular forum for the country's budding and practiced public speakers. This year's topic, everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Speakers are allowed to argue for and against this topic, and it is only fair to say that the European Commission, who sponsor this competition, are certainly hoping that we do not return to our pre-COVID way of life. The impact of the climate crisis is such that we are all aware that we need to change the way we live. The EU target to make Europe the first climate-neutral continent by the year 2050 is one that will focus us all to change how we work, how we live, build and eat to reduce our carbon footprint. It will also focus us to revalue the natural environment, our biosphere, which centuries of destruction have resulted in a new age of extinction, similar to the one that ended the dinosaurs. It is only by changing that we can continue to survive and to thrive. For those of you arguing that post-COVID you cannot wait to enjoy all the familiar human things of open contact, family gatherings, meeting friends, sport, going out in groups, that you will no doubt all of our agreement on, but it cannot come soon enough as we battle through this epidemic. So on whatever side of the topic you chose to speak, I would like to wish you good luck in this competition and thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you, KIERAN. Well, as with any competition, we need judges as well. We have 3 judges today, and they're going to judge the speeches under the following 4 criteria: content and evidence of preparation, presentation and delivery, structure and clarity, and overall effectiveness and impact of presentation. I'll pass you over now for a few words from the judges.
Thank you, MAEVE, and good morning to you all. My name is Eddie McGurrind. I'm a member of Public Speakers Sligo. We're a club dedicated to promoting and facilitating public speaking. It's well known that speaking in public is an awful dread for most people. And the main reason is they're not used to it. It's not part of their normal routine. But with practice, you develop a skill and a confidence and a competence in that. We used to meet in Sligo Park twice a month, the first and third Wednesday from 8 to 10, 2 hours. It's a structured meeting, and the aim is to give as many people as possible a chance to find their voice and to take part. Central to that is about 2 or 3 speeches of 5 minutes, and somebody can evaluate them. But it's all about speaking, being up in front of an audience at your own pace, no rush. We're delighted to see the schools taking part, because we all feel we wish we'd done this when we were younger. So it's a fantastic thing to see young people taking part and being up for the challenge. It's a skill that you'll stay with you all your life, and the more you do it, the better. This year is quite a challenge for everybody because we're online, and that's an extra challenge because not only have you to formulate your arguments in 3 minutes for this topic, but you have to present yourself effectively on screen, which is an extra challenge. So we're delighted that people are taking that on. I want to thank Pat Gannon of Sligo Library for inviting us to be part of it, and Donald Tinney. We've been involved with this for years, taking part, judging and taking part. So it's a wonderful event to be part of. So good luck to everybody in their competition this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Maeve, and thank you, Pat, for inviting me to be one of the judges in today's competition. Being a member of Public Speakers Sligo, I always have the privilege and the benefit of seeing and watching my fellow members do their soapbox competition pieces in front of the whole club, and the concept really interests me. Today's topic is very timely and is very relevant as we are still experiencing the havoc brought about by COVID-19. I am really looking forward to hearing what the participants have to say on the topic and how they are coping and how they are reassessing their values as they prepare for their speeches. It takes courage to do that. To the participants, enjoy the experience and take it all in, and you are all winners in my eyes. Good luck and enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maeve. And thanks to Pat for inviting me to be a judge this evening. I was introduced to the soapbox a few years ago by a fellow member of Public Speakers Sligo, Eddie McGurrin, and I must say I really enjoyed the experience. It was really rewarding and very interesting. It's a good thing for everybody to do some public speaking, but the topic tonight of the soapbox is, well, it's highly topical. It's something that affects all of us, and it's an opportunity, I think, for a reset of society, of the way we view society and the way we live, and the consequences of that, and of course the opportunities that we may take advantage of as a result of having to live our lives differently. I hope you all enjoy the experience tonight and get something very valuable from it. There can only be one winner and one runner-up in each category, but everybody who competes is very much a winner. You've had an interesting experience in preparing your topic, and now we will wait and see what the outcome is. So back to you, Maeve.
And just a reminder of what the topic is this year, everybody wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. We have a number of speakers in the first competition from various secondary schools in the Northwest under the Europe Direct umbrella based in Sligo here. And so without further ado, I'm going to call on the first speaker from the Erskine College, Aoibhinn Maher.
Good afternoon. My name is Aoibhinn Maher. Everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. I'm going to be honest with you. When I first heard this statement, I was in full agreement. I was angry. My TY year had been ruined, and everything I was looking forward to was cancelled. I wanted to experience the culture of Italy, have my TY ball, and go to festivals with my best friends. But when I sat down to really think about it, I realised I had made an enormous mistake. It didn't matter if I couldn't have my school musical when coral reefs were disappearing, sea levels were rising, and species were becoming extinct. My problems were insignificant compared to the bigger picture. This virus is bigger than me, bigger than you, bigger than all of us. It multiplies quickly, but the positive opportunities we have got from it are astronomical. The UN Environmental Chief said, "Nature is sending us a message," and I believe we should listen. I know things seem bad now, and they are. Our cases are rising rapidly, and the economy is in a bad position. But take a step back. Imagine a timeline from 2020 to 2100. The environment is thriving. We have reduced travel by car by 85% from continuing the habits we began this year. Carbon emissions are at an all-time low, and renewable energy is our main source of energy. I'll be 95. Will I remember that in 2020 the economy was bad, or the amount of cases we had on a certain date? No. I'll be breathing fresh air, looking up at clear skies, and being thankful that my grandchildren can live in a better world than I was given. Over the last 8 months, nature has taken back the control. For the first time in years, the water in the Venice canals are clear and our beaches are clean. Imagine if we continued these habits until 2100. Humans, who were previously the problem, could become part of the solution. So, what can we do? We can ask ourselves, can I work from home more? Do I need to drive everywhere? There's not many times in life we get the chance to restart. We must decide how we do this wisely. I encourage you to continue into the future with the perks of pre-COVID, but the lessons we learned during it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Aoibhinn, for that. It's never easy to be the opening speaker in a competition, and I think you're absolutely right. This virus is bigger than all of us. I now call on the second speaker of our 14 speakers for the evening, Dara McDonough from Summerhill College.
Good afternoon. My name is Dara McDonough. I am here today to contest the motion, everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. On Monday of this week, almost 11 months after news spread of the first outbreak of coronavirus, the worldwide cases figure for COVID-19 surpassed the 40 million mark. A devastating statistic. The loss of every life claimed is desolating. Out of every situation comes learning. I ask you, is there anything we have learned from this pandemic? I contend that it would be an insult to the memories of those who died if we did not learn some key messages. Pre-COVID, we were time poor. We had limited quality time to spend with family and friends. Everyone was so busy. Too busy to consider what is really important in life. The adage, every cloud has a silver lining, comes to mind. We would be very stupid if we didn't see the silver lining and learn from our mistakes. Go back to that way of life? I don't think so. We need to stop reminiscing on a time that was far from perfect and tackle one of the greatest threats to civilization, climate change. David Attenborough, in his recent Stark documentary, recounted disastrous effects of climate change to date. For example, the ice caps have depleted by 40% in the last 40 years. Since COVID, the Earth had the ability to replenish itself somewhat. Let me share just two simple examples of that with you. Grounded flights, emptied roads and shuttered factories has resulted in a 17% drop in CO2 emissions. And citizens in northern India can now see the Himalayan mountain range for the first time due to the drop in air pollution. Positive outcomes of the COVID-19 crisis, wouldn't you think? A governmental climate action bill has been released which commits to achieving a 7% carbon reduction per annum by the year 2050. This is in line with the EU targets for a climate neutral Europe. This figure was already achieved during the pandemic, which reinforces my point. We can make a difference. This week is EU Green Week. Let's not revert to our pre-COVID ways of insatiable, destructive greed. We should have the collective cop on to save our extraordinary planet. My contention is that if we continue to ignore this issue, lockdowns will be the least of our worries. This is a time for self-analysis, a time to re-evaluate who and what we are. The impact of our actions on the planet is undeniable. The science is undisputed. We must act. So, you tell me, everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life? What a retrograde step for humanity. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dara. You're so right. Out of every situation comes some sort of learning. I'd now like to call on our third speaker of the day, ANUSKA PATHAK from Sligo Grammar School. Thank you, ANUSKA.
Hello and good evening, esteemed judges. My name is ANUSKA PATHAK, and today I will be speaking on the motion, everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Sure, everybody wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life, but the question I will be posing today is, should we? Now, I would be lying if I stood up here and said to you all that I don't want to go back to the way things were in December 2019, because I so do. I want to see my friends, I want to give and receive hugs, I want to see my family. I haven't seen my extended family in 2 years because they live all the way over in India. And I miss them so much. I miss my granny especially and all the stories she'd tell me. And just the other day, I was thinking about how I'd tell my grandkids crazy stories about how I lived through a global pandemic, went to school online. But then I had a thought that stopped me in my tracks. I thought, wait a minute, will there even be future generations? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the world is dying. Our environment is dying and nobody cares. And I will tell you exactly why nobody cares. It is because it is easy to ignore it and move on with your day. Honoured guests, I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a big fan of the condiment Nutella. I'm very partial to it on toast. But when I learned that to source palm oil, one of the main ingredients in the delicious condiment, they were cutting down huge chunks of rainforest in Borneo, leaving so many different types of flora and fauna without a home. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my god, I cannot support Nestle anymore. I will never eat another jar of Nutella for as long as I live. And while it's very easy for me to say that when I'm at home alone, it becomes a lot harder when I'm in aisle 7 of Tesco, staring at a big shelf full of so many jars of Nutella, and I'm just thinking, oh, one more can't hurt, right? One more can't do anything, right? Wrong. That is incorrect because it can. Every single jar of Nutella, every little bit of palm oil matters. If we as a society don't realize that, oh, one more can't hurt is wrong, then we won't have a society. There won't be a society anymore. The way we lived before March 2019 was not and is not sustainable. Carbon emissions were so very high, pollution rates were absolutely insane. But I think that if we don't stop fussing about how one more can't hurt and how hard it is to implement changes to our lifestyle to be more eco-friendly, then we'll actually end up doing even more serious harm to our climate than we've ever done before. Maya Angelou once said, "If you can't change it, change your attitude." We cannot reverse the damage that has been done to our climate in the years before, but what we can do is implement little things into our lifestyles to make them more eco-friendly, like taking your bike to work or using less plastic. And if we don't, there's no chance of us ever going back to a reality, to a life with some semblance of normality. Thank you for listening to me. I have been ANUSKA PATHAK. Thank you.
ANUSKA, thank you for that speech. Should we or shouldn't we? That is the question I think we're all asking these days. Speaker number 4 today is Anna Quinn from the Mercy College Sligo. Anna.
Hello through the screen, adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anna Quinn from Mercy College Sligo, and today I will be opposing the motion, "Everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life." I chose to oppose the motion because I do not believe that everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. While I do miss the way life used to be, hanging out with friends, going to crowded parties, freely travelling abroad, the motion is not I want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life, is it? And that is why I do not believe you could propose the motion, because not every single person in the world wants to go back to the way life used to be. And why don't they? Although COVID has been an extreme inconvenience, as if a huge meteor has crash-landed in the middle of all of our lives, some good has come from it. Due to COVID, many people have started working from home. Although that may be challenging for some, many people love it. Not having to travel as much, being in less of a hurry, spending more time with their families. It has really suited some people very well, and I bet they don't want to go back to the pre-COVID 9 to 5 in an office way of life. Along the lines of working from home, some students enjoyed online school. Many students find the school day very long and tiring, whereas online, those students flourish and were able to reach their full potential. For an extrovert like me, lockdown was a very difficult time. As I mentioned before, not being able to socialise with friends or go out was particularly challenging. But for an introvert, it was heaven. Staying in the comfort of their home, not having to socialise or have much social interaction is like a dream come true for introverts, and I bet they don't want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Due to shops being closed, many small businesses started online shops, which if not for the pandemic they may never have started. By doing this, they expanded their customer base and reached new markets. This has brought great success for these businesses. Other businesses, such as mask and hand sanitizer producers, definitely don't want to go back to pre-COVID because they have never had as much business. In relation to tackling climate change, COVID has actually brought some benefits. Pollution noticeably reduced during lockdown due to reduced air travel, which resulted in decreased aviation fumes. The closing of factories, which reduced emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and less traffic as people were not out and about as much. During lockdown, we were all so amazed to see the clear waters in Venice and fresh air in Hong Kong. This is the first time those things have been seen in centuries in such big cities. I think that for all of these reasons, not everybody wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life, even if not everyone will admit it. My name is Anna Quinn, and I strongly urge you to oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna, for that, and certainly very thought-provoking thinking about the greater good of our country and the wider world. Our next speaker, number 5, is from the Erskine College, ORLA DEVLIN. ORLA, over to you.
Hello. Everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Should I agree or disagree? Of course, I would have loved more than one friend over for my sweet 16th birthday party, but was lockdown all bad? Let's refresh our minds. Pre-COVID-19. Everything is grand. Sure, there's a touch of global warming, growing waste mountain, 5,000 people die every day as a result of drinking unclean water. But let's not talk about that right now. It's too depressing. It's tomorrow's problem. Let's just shop till we drop and have fun in the sun. COVID-19 in Ireland. We have to wear masks every day, we can't meet with friends, will this ever end? But wait, air quality's improved. Global emissions are down. Just last week, Carbon Brief published that the COVID-19 pandemic has triggered the largest ever annual fall in CO2 emissions. So, do I want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life? Post-COVID-19, Scenario 1. I'm so glad we seized that incredible opportunity we got when the country shut down. I'm so happy we used it to rebuild from the ground up by switching to green energy and improving things like recycling and waste disposal. If we hadn't gone green and completely changed our lifestyles, who knows where we'd be? Post-COVID-19, Scenario 2. The Californian and Australian wildfires now seem like children playing with matches. Beachfront property is now underwater property. Try to imagine yourself sitting on a huge pile of garbage, unable to breathe. That was our past, present, and future. So again, do I really want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life? That consumerist, constantly accelerating society was not one to be proud of. By agreeing with this motion, we are condoning actions which have caused climate change, loss of biodiversity, pollution, global warming. We are telling the people who destroyed our planet that they were right all along. We are agreeing with them that going green is a luxury that we cannot afford right now, instead of the essential that it is. So if you were to take away one thing from today, let it be this. COVID. COVID. Can our voices inspire defiance? Can we stop this train with no brakes, heading for the edge of a cliff? Can we be the voices of the future generations, desperate for an earth that may support them? Can we seize this opportunity so that we are not subjected to the pre-COVID way of life? I don't know yet, but I will do my best. Thank you.
Thanks, Orla. That definitely made me think about tomorrow's problems today. Very, very thought-provoking, more than the other speeches. I'd now like to call on speaker number 6, Cormac Feeney from Summerhill College. Cormac.
Hello everyone. My name is Cormac Feeney and I'm a 5th year student in Summerhill College, and I would like to talk about the topic of why everyone wants to go back to a pre-COVID way of life. I personally believe that going back to what is now commonly referred to pre-COVID is unattainable. The title of this year's Soapbox competition is a true reflection of the atmosphere among general society, both young and old. This phrase of going back to pre-COVID times or normality is commonly used in many conversations that I have been involved with over the last number of months. In my opinion, I believe that this statement is one of hope and optimism rather than realism. Before the coronavirus pandemic hit, atmosphere was seeing an average of 1 degree increase in atmospheric temperature. According to Carbon Brief, the emissions throughout Europe have decreased by 5% since the start of April, which converts to 3 billion tonnes of global warming gases. These are the kind of reductions that will need to happen annually if we want to achieve a carbon neutral Europe by 2050. I believe that these facts will inspire households and individuals to develop environmentally friendly practices as we enter into what is the new COVID life. Images of what were cloudy canals in Venice, which turned to crystal clear waterways during the lockdown, are very uplifting. People throughout Europe and the world have begun to realise that going back to what is pre-COVID is unrealistic, as further lockdowns appear to be on the cards in many countries throughout Europe. Rather than looking back on what life was like pre-COVID, people have to adapt to this current situation and embrace it. People should embrace the simple things in life, such as the sun, sea and soul. When people appreciate the wonderful natural amenities that we have on our doorstep, such as local beaches, riverways and walks, and admiring autumn sunrises, life becomes a whole lot better. During lockdown, people discovered local cycleways and walks, including many gardens which they never knew existed. The knowledge of nature gems will be embedded in people's minds, and I personally believe they will use them as a place of relaxation as we embark into the new world of COVID in the upcoming months and years ahead. Finally, the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Bill 2020, which commits to low carbon development and a net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 through a national 2050 climate objective that states will pursue the transition to climate resilient and climate neutral economics by the end of 2050. Measures such as these will create a new way of thinking when it comes to environmental measures and practices, because it will have to be legally enforced in the upcoming years ahead. I would like to thank you for taking the time to listen to my speech.
Thanks, Cormac, for that note of hope and optimism in your speech. I'd now like to call on speaker number 7, Mia Sawi Brandon from Sligo Grammar School. Welcome, Mia.
Hello, my name is Mia Sawi Brandon. I'm your usual teenager. I like messing around with my friends. I don't like assignments, especially when I realise it's due for tomorrow just before I go to bed. Today, this teenager is going to talk about this motion. Everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. There will be no articles nor statistics to support me, so please bear with me. I agree with the statement. Okay, I won't say that every single one of us 100% wants to go back to our previous lifestyle. You might like working from home. Maybe your company was a big success because of COVID. I don't know. However, I believe that most of us want to go back to our old life. I want to. There was this moment when my heart truly sunk, when it really made me think that I don't want this anymore. It's not when I see the news reporting another XXX amount of cases. It's not when I can't talk with my friends without friendly slap or fist bumps. It's not when I had to listen to people giving these emotional speeches about possible recessions, depressions, and their own dissections. When I first started to work on my speech, I was against this motion. I planned to just simply, logically babble on for how some people, some things, it is just life, a condition they benefit from. I was not much interested in this motion. I even thought it was boring. Yeah, I don't like these masks and social distancing stuff, but sure, I can live with this. Yes, I still can. But there was this one moment where I thought I couldn't bear with this anymore. Something very bad happened. This person I love and care for was crying beside me. They were in pain. I wasn't able to hold them tight to comfort them. I felt so powerless. All I did was staring at them. I won't say that I would have changed the situation even if I was able to hug them as hard as I would like. But I had to hesitate and pull myself back. This changed my view of this motion. Is it a crime for me to touch someone? Is it a crime for us to just spend time with each other? It is with this virus. Corona sucks, simple as that. I want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life, and I believe many people would agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. You certainly spoke from the heart in that speech. Our next speaker is number 8, Ella Joyce from the Ursuline College. Ella.
Hello, I'm Ella Joyce, and today I'll be speaking on the topic, everybody wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. So, when I was 9, we moved house. It's been 6 years and I'm only just getting over that. When I was 8, we changed the old raggedy carpet in our hall. That old carpet was very 70s is all I'll say. Think flower power and neon, a great combination. The new carpet was much better, but it was different and therefore it was bad. The point I'm making here is that we humans, we really don't like change. That's part of what made lockdown so scary. It was so different. But it did give us a lot of food for thought. You hear people talking all the time about going back to normal, and they don't seem to realise that the normal we were used to was an extremely flawed, misogynistic society that treated disabled people, people of colour, LGBTQ+ people as lesser for just being themselves. Life as we knew it was big companies poisoning the earth, the air and the water and blaming ordinary people for eating meat or using plastic. A bit like our old carpet, we really need a change. Of course, COVID and lockdown doesn't mean we can fix all of these problems, but what it does mean is it's given us a golden opportunity to do something about climate change. Did you know that during lockdown, global emissions dropped, but only by 8.8%? Or that there are 100 companies responsible for 71% of emissions globally? Or lastly, that you yourself are responsible for less than 0.000000001% of emissions. That's not a big number. I don't know about you, but what this says to me is that we need to stop carbon shaming ordinary people and start imposing harsh penalties on these companies to force them to go carbon positive or carbon neutral. So, to recap, do I want to go back to pre-COVID life? No. I think we should take all the good parts of the past. And don't get me wrong, there were so many. For example, hugging your grandparents, or blowing out the candles on a birthday cake, or sharing a packet of chips on the beach. We should bring these good things forward into a cleaner and better future. As Rick Warren said, we are all products of our past, but we do not have to be prisoners of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ella, for giving that perspective on how we deal with change. I'd now like to call on speaker number 9, PADRAIG CAWLEY from Summerhill College. PADRAIG.
Hello, my name is PADRAIG CAWLEY. I'm a 5th year student at Summerhill College in Sligo. COVID-19 has profoundly impacted on all of our daily lives. From when we leave the house in the morning to travel to school, to when we tuck into bed, we are constantly reminded of this deadly disease. This global pandemic has changed not only the way in which we live our lives, but the way in which we act. Before this pandemic, everyone was hugely invested in climate change. We were beginning to act on changing the way in which we lived our lives. People were beginning to comprehend the severity of climate change and how we were a huge proportion of the cause of climate change. People were beginning to change the way in which they lived. People were more conscious of their amount of waste, their carbon footprint, and their litter. Before this pandemic, people had mostly removed nearly all single-use plastics from their home. Things were getting better from an environmental point of view. However, COVID-19 struck Europe and we all had to protect ourselves by wearing face masks, using hand sanitizer, wearing gloves and socially distancing. Unfortunately, from an environmental point of view, the majority of the preventative measures required single-use plastics and materials. Most masks were surgical single-use masks that people were wearing and then throwing away. Unfortunately, a proportion of these masks have ended up in landfill. This was adding to our waste problem. COVID-19 had in many ways put us back. We were doing so well in our fight against the increased speed of global warming. Before COVID, people were more aware of the climate problem. Global warming was causing more extreme weather events, and it was causing these more frequently than ever before. I think everyone was beginning to notice that. Every 2 weeks we were having an extreme weather event, whereas before we wouldn't have had an event twice in the same year to the same extent. Before COVID, our politicians were acting at local, national and even at a European level. All member states of the European Union came together to act as one against the rapid growth of climate change. The European Union agreed a European Green Deal. This was a set of policy initiatives set by the European Commission which had an overarching aim of making Europe climate neutral by 2050. This deal ensured a just transition. This means no one would be left behind in making the changes to reach the aim of this deal. Supports were made available to people so they could become climate neutral in the way in which they live their lives. Hopefully, by the end of this year, COVID-19 will have passed over and we will be able to restart in our fight against climate change. Hopefully, people can get back to the pre-COVID way of living, the way in which we all play our part in slowing the growth and development of climate change and achieving a climate neutral Europe by 2050. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Pádraig, for exploring the impact on the way COVID makes us live and act. Our next speaker is number 10, Daithí Meehan from Sligo Grammar School. Daithí.
Hello, my name is Daithí Meehan and I will be debating on the motion that we all want to get back to the pre-COVID way of life. I'm defining this motion as, we the citizens of Ireland want to get back to the pre-COVID way of life. I think that the term pre-COVID way of life means how we behaved before this pandemic. I think that lockdown has had a lot of benefits that we have overlooked. Yes, there has been bad moments, but there has also been an amazing learning and reflection on our lifestyles. Yes, there has been loneliness, and yes, there has been bad moments, but this will pass. I think that the way we behave in society will be changed forever, and for the better. We all have had to spend more time than ever with our families. Because there's been no football, tennis, basketball, we've had movie nights, game nights, board game nights. Yes, there's been arguments over Monopoly, but it was an experience we will never forget. Ever since we were told to stay in our individual counties, we've appreciated what we have. We've discovered our beautiful greenways, forests and lakes. Perhaps we're envious of our city cousins living beside the airports, the shopping centres, the music venues. But now we've realised we can enjoy our space in the west of Ireland. Instead of going on a foreign holiday, we've made memories in our own county. If I had a penny for every time somebody said the words Zoom call, I would need a new piggy bank. Everyone from junior infants to elders in Quinnan have been video calling at some stage or other. I have heard stories of my friends' grannies who before this pandemic would need help turning on a phone. Now they have learned to use apps such as WhatsApp and Zoom so they can see their grandchildren's faces. So in the end, after the dust settles, we will look back with some good memories from lockdown. It could be said that pre-COVID we've been failing to value and appreciate what we had, what was in front of us instead of always chasing it down the road, quite literally. This generation of school children will never be able to take for granted being able to go to school and enjoy the simple pleasure of meeting their friends. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Daithí, for that reflection on how we are as a COVID society. Our next speaker is number 11, May Weir from the Mercy College. May.
Good afternoon. My name is May Weir and I'm going to be arguing on the motion that everyone wants to go back to a pre-COVID way of life. I am wholeheartedly dedicated to this idea or the belief that the fabric of my society and of our society is the strongest element in this universe. And it is because of that belief that I must reject this motion. Since the beginning of time, obstacles of varying degrees of gravity have been thrown at us, and time again we either fail or succeed to overcome them. But regardless, society prevails. Human life lives on as we try to learn from our mistakes and then advance, regardless of our strife. We look at the great tragedies of the human race, a lot of our own making, such as the world wars that we have fought or the nuclear weapons that we have created. But others would be considered acts of God, for instance, the Boxing Day tsunami or many earthquakes that the society has suffered through. But the one thing that ties all these tragedies together is our ability to survive them and to overcome them, our unity in helping others who have suffered the most to bounce back. We bring ourselves together in times of need and in times of suffering. COVID-19 will go down in history as a great tragedy and a period of suffering for the entire earth. But we may also look back on this time as a period of awakening to our own situations. The coronavirus has shattered our initial defenses and as a result laid bare our inequalities as well as our points of strength. So many in this world have been surviving for so long under the perception that we are thriving or that this is as good as it gets for you. And I think living through COVID has brought to light the many problems that we would have previously brushed aside or procrastinated on solving. We discovered gaps in our healthcare systems, in our social protection systems. We gained a new appreciation for frontline workers. those who work in jobs we would not have respected to this degree before, such as in supermarkets or local stores. On the plus side, we have experienced from dealing with COVID-19 is an absolute sense of solidarity within our community, within your community, within the global community. I'm reminded of the Japanese practice, kintsugi, a practice where you fix a broken piece of pottery using gold adhesive. The idea is that we acknowledge our scars and make them beautiful, and that we become proud of what we've gone through as a mark of strength. This art practice is a physical manifestation of resilience, that we will become stronger from what we have gone through rather than weaker. I do not wish to go back to a pre-COVID way of life because that is counterproductive. I wish to go forward as society progresses, together, stronger.
Thanks, May, for that commentary on society and how we deal with challenges to the human race. Our next speaker is speaker number 12, Jacob Hamilton from Summerhill College. Jacob.
Haven't we all, at one point in this past year, wondered, wouldn't it be so much better, so much easier to go back to the way things were? Or, in other words, to go back to our pre-COVID way of life? Well, I certainly have. It's only human to dislike the constant stress, itchy masks, stinging hand sanitizer, alienating social distance, and the obtrusive yellow tape that's now wrapping up our once free lives. However, I will make the case that our pre-COVID way of life was a failure, and how we now have the experience to go beyond it. Our society's profound inequalities were laid bare by COVID-19. When we were urged to stay at home, the wealthy were content in their leafy suburbs, while those in cramped, rented apartments suffered. The move to an online world was easier for some, but a source of constant stress and anxiety to those with inadequate devices and internet connections. The rich caste of knowledge workers in multinationals calmly continued with their work online during the lockdown, while those in the hospitality sector and the service industry were laid off in their thousands. Despite all this, COVID-19 has also wrought major positive changes to our lives, with the increasingly powerful intervention of state and science in our lives. On the 24th of March, the state announced it would take control of all private hospitals for the duration of the pandemic. In one fell swoop, hospital overcrowding became a non-issue. Up until August 1st of this year, the government banned evictions and froze rents to protect those who had lost their jobs from becoming homeless. According to the Department of Housing, homelessness figures dropped for 5 consecutive months between March and July. And with the Pandemic Unemployment Payment, or PUP, up to around €350 has been doled out every week to those who are now unemployed. And also, scientists and engineers from across the globe have joined forces to develop everything from vaccines, tests and treatments to hand gel, masks, and even contact tracing apps in a minuscule time frame. The SARS vaccine took 20 months, while the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine may need only half that time. So what have we learned? Governments can respond swiftly and decisively to major threats. Social problems can be dealt with by large but prudent interventions, and human scientists and engineers can mobilize effectively to nearly defeat what would have been a cataclysmic disaster 30 or 40 years previous. Everybody does want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life, but our post-COVID lives, however, must change, and with a bit of careful socialism and groundbreaking science, I feel it could be change for the better.
Thanks, Jacob. And the image you created of the yellow COVID tape is going to stay with me for a while, I think. Our next speaker, and the second last speaker in this part of the competition, is number 13, Sean Keane from Summerhill College. Welcome, Sean.
Hello, my name is Sean Keane, and I'm here to discuss whether everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. When people think about COVID, they can't help but think about all the negative bits. No sports, no family reunions, like Easter, and no trips abroad, and the predicted grades really messed up some people's futures. Now, even though all of those things sound bad, to say that everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life just wouldn't be true, and here's why. Firstly, the COVID regulations meant that people with long commutes to work, working abroad, or working long hours could now work from home. Working hours became more flexible, and the focus was getting the work done rather than how long you stayed at work. So for those lucky to still have a job, they could spend a lot more quality time with their partners and families. The employers gained too, as it turned out many people were more comfortable working with looser hours in a familiar environment where they could be more relaxed and as a result a lot more productive. From early in lockdown, we were confined to a 2-kilometre area and a 5-kilometre area. Suddenly, the roads were quiet and there were nowhere for people to drive, so the people had to be a lot more creative with how they spent their time. The streets ended up being filled with joggers, walkers and cyclists. You could literally see people getting fitter and fitter as the weeks went on. So, through a pandemic, many of us actually got healthier, and we discovered areas of our neighbourhood we had never been before. Another benefit was with all the cars parked up and much heavy industry paused, pollution levels dropped. Cities that suffered from smog for years suddenly had clean air. With less noise and more time, we noticed nature all around us, and even the litter levels on the street were way down. Finally, there was a sense of society where we all pulled together during lockdown. We got to know people living around us, we looked out for their elderly neighbours and relatives, and showed great respect for people and personal space and health. So when you think about that you would love everything to go back to how it was pre-COVID, I would have to disagree with you. Let some of the activities that we enjoyed come back, but let's not forget the quality time we spent with our families, to keep fit, to be more aware of the environment, and to look out for those living around us. Now, I think that would be a great society. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Sean. Lots of ideas there for ways to use our time more creatively during COVID. Now, our last speaker of the evening in the 18 and under competition is Alfie Barron from Sligo Grammar School. Speaker number 14, Alfie.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alfie Barron and today I will be opposing the motion, everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Before I begin, I would like to share a quote with you all. The problem with the rat race is, even if you win, you're still a rat. Have you ever paused to think about this, ladies and gentlemen? This is essentially what this motion implies. This constant scurrying about, looking for the next thing, pushing the right buttons for the next chunk of cheese. Do we really want to jump feet first back into rushing about, nibbling our way through life without ever pausing for thought? Scuttling from one activity to the next instead of looking up and enjoying the moment. This is what lockdown gave us. A chance to just stop and breathe. To look around and notice the beauty of the things that surround us. If you don't believe me, then just try and buy a bike. Every single one is sold. Is that not a clear sign that people have been getting out and enjoying the natural beauty of our world? That leads me on to my next point, ladies and gentlemen. When the world plunged into lockdown, it did wonders for the environment. The canals had never been cleaner in Venice, and children in Chinese cities saw the blue sky for the first time. Are we really going to rob them of that by going back to the way things were and polluting the world all over again? Ruining the Earth's natural beauty until it's as dank and cold as the sewers that rats inhabit? Or are we going to change the way we act and realise the amazing things we have open to us on our doorstep? Are we seriously going to tell all the Indian people who have finally seen clean and unpolluted air in their cities that we're going back to releasing massive amounts of carbon emissions? Not only that, now that we've gone back to school and places are starting to reopen, we are using colossal amounts of PPE. We now use a collective 72,000 pieces of equipment per day. And that's not per nation, ladies and gentlemen. That's just in one average-sized hospital. And where does all this non-biodegradable equipment go? The answer is huge landfill sites. And what do we usually find scurrying about in all the plastic trash? Rats. Now, I'm not saying we have to put a complete end to our social lives and activities. I'm saying that we should take the things that lockdown taught us and merge them with our pre-COVID lifestyles. That way we get the best of both worlds without sacrificing anything. We can slow down and take our time through life instead of scuttling through it. Because we only get one chance. We shouldn't let it pass us by in a flash. And now to finish, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share a story with you. A very wise man once told me that life is a journey. So why should we waste this joyous ride? Thank you.
Thanks, Alfie. That was a lovely note to finish this section of the competition on, just getting us to stop and look around and think about our lives and society and the wider world. And indeed, I think all the students have touched on these elements of our lives. The whole set of speeches today has been so uplifting, so challenging. You've all been very logical in your arguments, but you've also been very, very passionate, and you can see how you really all truly believed in what you were talking about. As ever, I know you've put in so much work in preparing these speeches, as have your teachers, so a special thanks to the teachers. I think anybody who stands up and speaks in public is to be applauded, no matter how long or short they speak for. And then this time, on top of it, you've had the online element to deal with. Not only did you have to prepare and deliver a speech, you've also done it online, and done it, I think everybody will agree, extremely successfully. Anyway, I'm not going to say any more, or I'll be turning into a judge, and that I am not. The judges, having watched all the speeches live, are now going to go off and deliberate, and will be back to us in a while with the result. In the meantime, Chris McManus, MEP, has a few words for us.
Hello everyone, my name's Chris McManus. I'm your Sinn Féin MEP in the Midlands North West constituency. The title of this year's soapbox is Everyone Wants to Go Back to the Pre-COVID Way of Life. My question to you is, do we really want to go back? The pre-COVID way may have been what we were used to and grew comfortable with, but we have to recognise that that way of life contributed to the climate chaos that grips our planet and all of our lives. In December last year, the European Commission launched its Green Deal strategy. This was an important first step that highlighted the need to ensure real and meaningful action is taken towards tackling the climate crisis. We need to work together to deliver a just transition in order to save our planet. The pre-COVID way of life was simply not sustainable, leaving too many of our citizens behind. We need to focus on a post-COVID way of life. We need to focus on a new future. In many ways, life has been paused by this pandemic. It's given us all a chance to re-evaluate how we do things. In my opinion, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to reshape our society. And whilst there are very uncertain times we are living through, 2020 has been a year we will never forget. We must be very certain of one thing though. As a society, we must learn from this crisis. We must learn that when we work together, show solidarity with each other, and place the resources of the state for the common good, we have the ability to forge a better society. The current crisis has required our government to implement many temporary emergency policies, such as a single-tier healthcare system, where patients receive care based on need, not wealth, where people can no longer be evicted into homelessness, where rent freezes are all of a sudden constitutional, where the state has a substantial role in funding childcare and social protection benefits have been increased. Like the Green Deal, these policies must become permanent if we are to have a better future. This pandemic has also highlighted the reality of the British border across Ireland. Since COVID took hold, we've seen two different sets of advice from our media, two different health systems, two different lockdowns, all on an island of less than 7 million people. Coronavirus has exposed the damaging nature of partition. Ignoring the border is no longer tenable. Unity is needed now more than ever. Irish society is seeking change. Post-pandemic, that thirst for change will only grow. People are rightly asking questions about our health service, our housing needs, and the quality of our environment. Quality of life issues such as working more from home, commuting less, and seeing more of our families must be at the forefront of many minds, as is the way many of us have come to fully value the importance of the role of our older citizens in our communities. So in my opinion, this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to start over, and we must grasp it if we don't want to return to the pre-COVID days of an unequal society. Finally, I'd like to congratulate all the participants for making it this far, and I wish you the very best of luck today. Hopefully we get to meet you all when things return to normality. Sinead, remember to look after yourselves and to stay safe. Slán agus beannacht.
Thanks for that, Chris. It's always really good to hear from one of our European representatives. Now we're going to continue with the second part of our competition today, and that is the 19 and over competition. We have two competitors, so I'm going to call on the first speaker, speaker number 1, Brian Fallon.
Everyone wants to go back to a pre-COVID way of life. Ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't agree more with this statement. I think we are all just fed up at this stage, completely fed up of the whole COVID thing. I want to use some F words here. It's okay, I'm not going to start swearing. First F word I want to use is freedom. I really don't think we knew how much freedom we had pre-COVID. These days, all we hear are restrictions. Levels of restrictions, more and more restrictions. Can't do this, you can't go here, can't meet your friends. A lack of freedom. Next F word I want to use is fear. There is an amount of fear and anxiety out there at the moment, and I feel it myself. I have gone through my own battles with mental illness over the last few years. And in a way, I feel that it's good that mental health concerns are being highlighted at this time. And I really hope that it helps people to get the help that they need. And there is help out there if we ask for it. And I hope people can help to overcome their fears. The last F word I want to use is fun. And again, it seems like our fun has been restricted over the last while. However, having said that, lots of people have come up with creative and inventive ways of having fun. And technology indeed has played a big role in this. So, to recap, the 3 F words that I've used: freedom, fear, and fun. Hopefully, when all of this COVID business goes away, we can regain the freedom, lose the fear, and get back to having fun. So absolutely, everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Brian. I'll certainly remember those 3 words: freedom, fear, and fun. I'd now like to call on our final speaker of this competition, and indeed our final speaker in the overall competition, Frank Quinn. Frank.
Good afternoon, adjudicators. My name is Frank Quinn. The motion for today's debate is everyone wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. Certainly one thing I wouldn't miss is this mask. But I think anybody who's involved in the manufacture or the distribution of PPE probably don't want to go back to the pre-COVID way of life. I would say the developers of Zoom don't want to go back, and I would say that Jeff Bezos of Amazon doesn't want to go back either. I mean, the motion refers to everyone. I presume that means not just the people who live in the industrialized countries of the West, but also people who live in the third world and maybe people who live in developing countries. I mean, 6% of the world's population are indigenous peoples, and they haven't really been impacted very much by COVID-19 at all, so it hasn't made much change for them. If we just look at Ireland, obviously there are groups who have been particularly badly affected by it. If you're involved in aviation, hospitality, or the entertainment sector, it's been disastrous for you, and they probably would want to go back. Outside of these groupings, like what have we lost? What do we want to go back to? Foreign holidays, not everybody can afford them. Dining out, again, not everybody can afford it. Going to the pub, I don't like going to the pub, not everybody does. attending sporting events is very few people can actually attend in person. I would say the TV audience for sporting events really dwarfs the number who can attend in person. For the most part, of course, big sporting events, they're not the same without an audience, but I've watched the French Open tennis tournament recently. Although there were very few, there were some spectators, I would say it was probably just as enjoyable as it would have been with a full audience. Of course, some things, a number of things have changed. Online shopping, online shopping, I suppose, has accelerated. It was a trend that was developing anyway. Working from home, that's something that has, I suppose, for the most part, been imposed on a large number of people. I would say for every person who possibly doesn't like working from home, others are beginning to see the advantage of being able to spend more time with their family, spend less time, commuting. The new restrictions, certainly have restricted the numbers who can attend social gatherings. 25 to 40% of the population are introverts like myself, so probably doesn't impact too much on us. So restricting numbers hasn't really affected us. One positive thing maybe about the pandemic is the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. They fell dramatically. Of course, they're on the rise again, but our pre-pandemic way of life was and will continue to be based on what Greta Thunberg called the fairy tale of eternal economic growth. It's simply not sustainable in the long term. I think the COVID-19 way of life is maybe an indication of how life might be in the future when climate change really starts to kick in. So thank you for listening. Stay at home and stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank, for that accurate picture of life under COVID-19. That brings to the conclusion our competition for today. And again, thank you to everybody in both categories who partook in the competition and all the work that you've put in across the board for this. And thank you for just giving us so much to think about during COVID-19. I'd also like to thank in particular Sligo Library, who've hosted this event this evening, specifically the Europe Direct Office, overseen by Pat Gannon. Pat has been doing Trojan work in the last few weeks organising this competition. It started off in a live format, it changed to semi-live, then it became blended, and then it became a fully online event, which I have to say he's managed absolutely fabulously. I'm sure you'd agree with me. And special thanks as well to James Dennison from Studio Rove, who recorded and edited and put together this whole piece for YouTube, which will be going out live from the Sligo Library YouTube channel. I'd also like to thank Declan, who brought out this signage to my own location here, so we'd have some branding for recording online, so thank you for that. Most of all, I would like to thank the participants and the teachers this evening. The teachers, particularly in these secondary schools, have had so much extra work because of COVID. Already, they would do extra work when they're getting their students ready for this competition. And on top of that, they also had to organise for the recordings to be made and sent into Sligo Library for broadcast live in this competition. So thank you so much to the teachers. I'm wishing all of you a very happy and well-deserved midterm break. Anyway, enough from me. The judges, I believe, have just finished deliberating over the results.
Thank you, MAEVE, and good day to you all. Well done to all competitors in the schools and the senior section. Well done for taking on this great challenge. It's very difficult to present a persuasive, coherent argument in 3 minutes. It takes a lot of practice, preparation and rehearsal. And we've seen lots of evidence of that today. An awful lot of practice and preparation. It's easier said than done to speak for 3 minutes, but you have to really practice and prepare. Public speaking is a big challenge and fear for everybody. And that's because for most people, it's not part of your normal routine. So that's why practice and preparation, which you have done in this public debate, will give you, help you along the way. The more you do that, the better it will be You strive for making better. Practice makes perfect, or better. You will be asked many times in your life to take on public speaking roles, or you may be expected of you. So that's why it's important that you should avail of every opportunity, and it will be less daunting when you're presented with it. The topic here today, everybody wants to go back to the pre-COVID way of life, is very appropriate given the situation we're in now. And we have lots of arguments for and against that. Mostly people wanted to not go back, but change, make the world better. So the arguments were very informative, they were wide-ranging, they were personal and passionate and humorous, and lots of research and lots of quotations. So it was a great event to be part of, and well done to everybody, the participants, the students for taking part, your parents and teachers. So thank you.
And I will now pass you over to the librarian, the Acting County Librarian of Sligo Library, Donal Tinney.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to announce to you the winners and runners-up of the 2020 Europe Direct Soapbox Competition for Mayo, Sligo, Leitrim. And in the 18 and under category, the runner-up was Evine Marr. Congratulations, Evine. And the winner is Orla DEVLIN. Congratulations, Orla. Well done. You'll go on to represent the Europe Direct Sligo, Leitrim, Mayo in the national competition. I move on to the 19 and over, or the adult section, and the runner-up there was Frank Quinn. Congratulations, Frank. And the winner is Brian Fallon. Congratulations, Brian, and you go on to represent Europe Direct Sligo, Mayo, Leitrim in the national competition. And thank you to all the participants who took part, took the time and effort to do their video and send it in to us in these very difficult times. And I wish you all well in the future of your debating. Thank you very much.
Well, everybody, that's it. Another competition over for another year. The Europe Direct Soapbox Competition. It's been different this year, but it's been wonderful to see so many people coming in and watching the competition from around the country and around the world. It's really given an opportunity for family and friends to see the fabulous talent here in the Northwest when it comes to speaking in a soapbox scenario. So without further ado, I'd like to wish you all well. Remember to share the link, and remember, Sligo Library is open online all the way through lockdown. Take care and goodbye.